She wasn't supposed to notice me. I was just the kid fixing the lights in her hotel. But the night she said, "No one can know," everything changed. I still remember the first time she said it. The way her voice dropped, calm but edged with something I couldn't name. No one can know. It wasn't a warning. Not exactly. It was heavier, like she was protecting something fragile. I'd only been working at the hotel for 2 weeks, a small seaside place just far enough from the city that people came to disappear. My job was simple. Fix what broke, carry luggage, pretend not to notice the silence between guests who arrived together but left separately. That morning, the storm had left puddles all over the courtyard. I was crouched by the reception desk, trying to get the old radiator to work again. That's when she came in, Elena, my boss's wife. Everyone talked about her before I met her. "She runs this place better than he ever could," one of the cooks said. "Doesn't smile much though." But when she spoke to me, it wasn't cold. "Didn't anyone tell you it leaks there?" she asked, her voice smooth, tired in a graceful way. I looked up. Her hair was tied back, but a few strands had escaped, catching the light from the window behind her. She wore a beige sweater, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and carried that quiet kind of confidence that didn't need to fill a room to own it. "No," I said, half smiling. "Guess I'm learning the hard way." She bent slightly, resting her hand on the counter near my tools. "That's the only way anyone learns anything here." Her tone wasn't teasing, but it stayed with me, like there was more behind the words. We worked in the same space for the next hour. I tried not to look at her too often, but when she passed behind me, the faint scent of coffee and something floral followed. She kept glancing at her phone but never replied to whatever message kept lighting it up. When I finally got the radiator running, the room filled with warmth, and suddenly we were both too aware of how quiet it was. "You fixed it," she said softly. "Just needed a little patience," I replied. Her eyes lingered on me for a second too long. Then she smiled small, private. The kind of smile that looked like it hadn't been used in a while. That's when the owner, her husband, called from upstairs. "Elena!" She straightened immediately, the air between us breaking like glass. "You should go," she said quickly, stepping back. Then softer, almost to herself, "No one can know." I froze, confused. "Know what?" She blinked, and just like that, the warmth vanished from her face. "About the leak. He doesn't need to know I asked you." Her tone was calm, but something in her eyes betrayed her. It wasn't fear, more like regret. I nodded, pretending to believe her. She turned and left, her footsteps fading into the hallway. But the air she left behind felt different, heavier, charged. Like the room still remembered something I wasn't supposed to. That evening, after everyone had gone, I walked past the reception again. The radiator was still ticking gently. Her coffee cup sat on the counter. Lipstick faded on the rim. I almost reached out to touch it, but stopped myself. There was nothing there. Nothing to explain why my chest felt tight or why I kept hearing her voice in my head. "No one can know." I didn't know what she meant, but it didn't sound like it was just about the radiator. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The next time I saw her, it was raining again. The kind of steady, quiet rain that makes you talk softer without realizing. I was fixing the lights in the hallway outside her office. The bulb kept flickering. Every few seconds the light would flash across her half-open door. Through that narrow slit, I caught glimpses of her. Sitting at the desk, reading something, her glasses low on her nose. Every so often, she'd press her fingertips against her temple like she was trying to hold herself together. When I finally knocked, she didn't look up. "Come in," she said, distracted. The office smelled like rain and old books. There were receipts and guest lists scattered across the table. She was trying to organize them but looked tired, like someone who carried 100 invisible things all at once. "I can come back later," I offered. She shook her head. "No, please. If that light keeps blinking, it'll drive me mad." I climbed onto the small stool and replaced the bulb. I could feel her eyes on me. Not constantly, just in quiet, fleeting glances that made my hands less steady than usual. "Your husband said the rooms are full this weekend," I said, mostly to fill the silence. She gave a small laugh, dry and unamused. "He says many things." Her voice lingered in the air after that. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she'd already turned back to her papers, pretending to read. A few minutes passed before she spoke again. "You're good at this," she said softly. "You fix things that everyone else ignores." I looked down at her, unsure if she meant the lights or something else. "It's just a habit," I said. "Can't stand when things stay broken." That made her look up, really look. Her eyes were sharper than I remembered, full of something almost defiant. "And what if some things aren't meant to be fixed?" she asked. I didn't answer. She smiled then, small, sad, like she already knew I wouldn't. The light stopped flickering. The room settled into a stillness that felt almost too intimate. She leaned back in her chair, watching the rain slide down the window. I noticed the faint tremor in her hand when she picked up her coffee cup. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked suddenly. "Of what?" "Of pretending everything's fine." The question hit harder than it should have. I wasn't sure if she was talking to me or herself. I wanted to say something honest, something that would make her feel less alone. But before I could, her phone rang. The sound broke the moment like a blade. She silenced it without looking. The room went quiet again, except for the rain. When I turned to leave, she called out, "Daniel." I stopped. She didn't move, didn't look at me. She just said, quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not asking questions." Her voice trembled just enough to betray her calm. When I stepped into the hallway, the world felt colder, emptier, like I'd left something warm behind. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't. And that silence felt louder than words. It started to happen more often. The small things. She'd call me to fix a window latch that wasn't broken, or ask me to help carry boxes that weren't really heavy. Always small reasons. Always when the hotel was quiet. That night, the wind was coming in hard off the ocean. Most of the guests had gone to bed, and the lobby was empty except for the faint hum of the old heater. I was closing up when her voice came from behind me. "Daniel, can you stay a bit?" I turned. She was standing by the doorway to the dining room, holding a tray with 2 cups of tea. Her hair was loose this time, soft waves brushing her shoulders. "I made too much," she said. "Seemed ashamed to waste it." I almost said no. I should have, but I didn't. We sat at a small table near the window. The rain outside made the glass blur, and for a while we just listened to it. She asked about my family, my plans, if I was saving up for school. Normal questions. But the way she asked, it felt like she actually cared about the answers. When I told her I didn't really know what I wanted yet, she smiled. "You have time," she said. "I envy that." There was something heavy in her tone, like she wasn't talking about age, but about choices she couldn't unmake. At one point, her hand brushed mine when she reached for the sugar. Neither of us moved right away. Just that single, suspended second, her fingers warm and still, against my skin. Then she pulled back like she'd touched fire. "Sorry," she murmured. "It's okay," I said, but my voice didn't sound like mine. We sat there, the quiet stretching between us, thick and charged. I could see the reflection of the candlelight in her eyes, small, flickering, uncertain. Then her phone buzzed on the table. A name flashed across the screen, Mark. Her husband. She stared at it without picking up. The ringing stopped, then started again. Finally, she turned the phone face down. "He's in the city tonight," she said, voice flat. "Business." I nodded, not sure what to say. The silence after that felt like a secret, something neither of us had agreed to keep, but both already were. When I stood to leave, she didn't move. Her eyes followed me as I reached for the door. "Daniel," she said quietly. I turned halfway. Her lips parted, like she was about to say something real, something she'd been holding in for too long. But then she stopped, looked away. "You should go now," she said. I hesitated, hand still on the door. For a second, I almost went back. My hand was halfway to hers when she said it again, softer this time. Go! And I did. But only my body left that room. For days after that night, I tried to keep things normal. Tried not to linger in the lobby when she was around. Tried to keep my voice steady when she spoke to me. But normal had already changed. Every glance felt different now. Every silence carried weight. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky looked more like old paper than clouds. I was repairing the shelf in the back storeroom when she came in. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me work. I could feel her presence before I even turned around. You missed breakfast, she said quietly. I smiled, still focused on the nails. Didn't feel hungry. Liar, she said, but softly. When I finally looked up, she was closer than I'd realized. Close enough that I could see the tiny scar near her lip, the faint shimmer of perfume that didn't quite hide the scent of coffee. Elena, I started, but she shook her head. Don't, she said. Don't say my name like that. Like what? Like it means something. Her voice cracked a little on the last word. She stepped back, but her hands stayed clenched at her sides. I set the hammer down. The silence between us was unbearable. I don't know what we're doing, I said finally. Neither do I. She let out a breath, shaky but controlled. But it needs to stop. Then say that, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Say you don't feel it too. She met my eyes, didn't blink, didn't look away. I'm married, she whispered. I know. Then why are you still here? I wanted to tell her, because I couldn't stop thinking about her laugh, her silences, the way she always noticed when I was tired. Because something about her felt like truth in a world that faked everything. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, maybe I don't know how to leave. That broke something in her. Her eyes softened, her shoulders dropped, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain outside had started again, tapping against the window like a heartbeat. She took a slow step forward, then another. When she finally stopped, we were inches apart. Daniel. Her voice was barely a whisper. I thought she might reach for me, or maybe I just wanted her to, but she didn't. Instead, she looked at me the way someone looks at a photograph they know they can't keep. Tender, afraid, almost grieving. I don't know what this is, she said softly. But it's not nothing. My throat tightened. Then what do we do? She didn't answer, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. And in that silence, something between us changed forever. After that day in the storeroom, she avoided me. Not rudely, just carefully. Her footsteps came with warning now. Her voice stayed professional even when no one else was around. But distance doesn't erase connection. It only sharpens it. A week later, she asked me to help move some boxes up to the attic. I almost said no, but there was something in her tone, tired, heavy, that made me follow without question. The attic was warm and dust-thick. Old furniture, photographs, and the smell of cedar filled the air. She stood near a stack of old photo albums, brushing her fingers along their spines like she was afraid to open them. You can set those there, she said. I did, then paused. You okay? She gave a small laugh. You shouldn't keep asking me that. Why not? Because one day, she said, I might actually tell you the truth. Her voice cracked on that last word. The silence that followed was too deep, too human. She reached for one of the albums and opened it. I moved closer without thinking. Inside were faded pictures, her younger, smiling beside a man who barely looked like the one she was married to now. Her hand hovered over one of the photos. That was before the hotel, she said. Before everything turned into this. She didn't need to explain. The tone said it all, years of trying, staying, losing herself in the routine of holding something that was already gone. He used to laugh a lot, she whispered. Now he just counts things. Money, yes, days. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. After a long pause, she turned to me. You remind me of someone, she said. Someone you knew? Someone I lost. Her eyes flickered, distant. He used to fix things too. My brother. He died when I was 20. I think that's why I keep asking you to stay, because for a few minutes when you're around, the world feels reparable again. The confession hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't romantic. It was raw grief shaped into habit. I wanted to comfort her, but she was already blinking away tears, embarrassed by her own honesty. I shouldn't have said that, she whispered. Forget it. But I couldn't. Without thinking, I reached out, my hand stopping just short of hers. She didn't pull away. For the first time, she didn't hide. She took a breath, deep, trembling, alive, like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And when she finally looked at me again, there was no fear left in her eyes, only recognition, a quiet understanding that whatever was happening between us wasn't wrong. It was simply real. She took another breath, steadier this time. You should go, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I nodded, but I didn't move right away, because in that small attic, surrounded by ghosts of her past, I realized something had shifted, something irreversible. For the first time, she looked at me without fear. After the attic, something between us stopped pretending. We didn't talk about it, didn't need to, but the silence had changed. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was knowing. She started staying later at the front desk after everyone else left. I'd find excuses to check the lobby lights, sweep the courtyard, fix things that didn't need fixing. It became a rhythm, quiet, unspoken, inevitable. One evening, the storm returned, the kind that bends trees and swallows sound. The power flickered out, leaving the hotel wrapped in candlelight and shadows. I found her in the lounge, standing by the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. She didn't turn when I walked in. I used to love storms, she said softly. Now they just make me think of everything I tried to hold together. Her reflection in the glass looked distant, almost fragile. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to hold it all, that someone else could, even for a moment, but the words caught in my throat. She turned then, her eyes catching the candlelight. You should be home, she said. I shook my head. I don't want to be anywhere else. Something in her expression faltered, a mix of disbelief and relief. She sat down on the couch, the old fabric sighing beneath her weight. I followed, leaving just enough space between us to pretend it meant nothing. The rain outside grew louder. The candles flickered. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, staring at her hands. You make it sound simple, she murmured. Maybe it is. Her laugh was quiet and tired. Nothing about this is simple, Daniel. I know. She turned her head slowly, her eyes finding mine. Neither of us looked away. There was no rush, no decision. Just a slow unraveling of all the things we'd been trying not to feel. After a while, she said, You shouldn't care about me like this. Too late. That made her close her eyes, exhale. And when she opened them again, something in her had softened. Not surrender, not guilt, just truth. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand on mine. Her touch was light, unsure, but real. We stayed like that. Two people sitting in a half-lit room, holding something that neither of us could name but both understood. No declarations, no promises, just presence. Outside, thunder rolled across the sea, and for the first time it didn't sound like something breaking. It sounded like something beginning. When the lights finally came back on, she didn't move her hand away. She didn't say she loved me. Her voice was barely a whisper. But she let her guard down. I finished for her. And that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's been months since that night. The storm passed, the hotel filled again, and life, at least on the surface, went back to what it was. But nothing really went back. Not for me. Not for her. She still runs the front desk with that same calm grace, greeting guests with practiced smiles. I still fix the same old pipes, sweep the same courtyard. From the outside, we look the same as before. But sometimes, when our eyes meet across the lobby, there's this brief flicker, like a page we both remember but no one else ever read. She never mentioned that night. Neither did I. We didn't need to. It wasn't about what happened. It was about what changed. Now she laughs more. It's quiet, almost private, but it's there. The sharp edge of her voice has softened. There's color in her face that wasn't there before. And me? I stopped waiting for perfect moments. I started noticing small things. The way morning light hits the old wood floors, how silence can be comforting when it's shared. She taught me that, without ever trying to. One afternoon, I found her in the garden behind the hotel, trimming the wild roses that had overgrown the fence. The air smelled like sea salt and earth. She looked up and smiled. "Still fixing things?" she teased. "Still breaking them," I said. She laughed then, really laughed. And I think that's when I realized something. Love isn't always the fire people talk about. Sometimes it's just the warmth that stays after the storm. We stood there for a while, the ocean humming in the distance. She didn't reach for me, and I didn't move closer. We didn't need to. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "I used to think regret was what kept me alive," she said. "Now I think it was just fear." I nodded. "Fear of what?" "Of feeling something real again." She looked at me then, not with longing, not with guilt, but with quiet recognition, like two people who'd finally forgiven themselves. There was nothing left to fix, no more to confess, just a moment that felt whole. As the wind shifted, I knew we'd always carry that night, not as a secret, but as a reminder of what honesty can cost and what silence can save. Later, when I locked up the workshop and looked toward the main building, I saw her closing the curtains in the upstairs room. For a second, she paused, like she felt me watching, and then smiled. It wasn't a goodbye. It wasn't a promise. It was something in between, something honest. I didn't just fall for an older woman. I fell into something rare, something true. And I hope, if you're listening, you find something like that too. Sparkles Engagement CTA. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?